Hello everybody and welcome back to episode 37 of the video series in which we program an entire video game from scratch, from beginning to end, in the C programming language. Before we start, I will look at a couple of the comments that I received since last time. This first one actually was from Facebook, my Facebook post. The commenter says, I watched this episode last night. First one I've seen. I like your code layout, very crisp. It's amazing how a little amount of code can cause such an amazing effect, but you need to add comments, especially to an area like you coded in this one to describe the logic of the panning. I too am a fan of C over C++ and write it the C way whenever possible. Alas, I do a lot of COM, which I spoke ill about in a previous video. So I do have to make interfaces and classes, but the functions themselves are very C-style. I hate exceptions. So first of all, thank you for the nice words about the code. I try to keep it clean as possible. And also, I completely agree on the comment about adding more comments to the code. Here's the problem, is that usually I only go back and comment things later after I'm finished with them, after I already know exactly how they're going to work and it's relatively set in stone. Then I will go back and start commenting things. But typically on this video, while I'm on camera, I'm often flying by the seat of my pants and I don't exactly know how it's going to work out yet. So that being said, I still understand and agree that commenting your code can still help with the thought process before you've even finished. You can make comments about, here is what I want this function to do, how I want it to behave, and then you can go revise the comments later. It can still help you think things through even before you've written them. So anyway, I will make an attempt. I will make an effort to comment more thoroughly as I'm coding. Especially considering this video series is specifically meant to be informative and educational, so it just makes sense to comment more. Okay, so let's move on to the next comment. This commenter says, C is a subset of C++. He put that in quotation marks because I said it. C is a subset of C++. He says, I would put it more like C++ is a superset of C. What's the difference? I mean, yeah, C came first, and then C++ came later and added a whole bunch of new features, but it didn't break any backwards compatibility with C. So it's pedantic. I don't think it really matters that much. But he says, nice series though. Thank you. Also, doesn't Visual Studio have some sort of presentation mode which makes the text bigger? At least that's what I thought. So so I set my monitor, this monitor that you're looking at now, it's in 2560 by 1440. It's a 1440p because that's just the native resolution of this monitor. I set the desktop resolution to, or zoom level, I should say, to 125%. Just for you guys, I used to run it at 100% normal size, but I realized that my screen size, it may make a lot of this text over here too small, so I set the zoom level to 125%, and then over here I set this text already to 160%. As it gets bigger, it just gets more and more cumbersome for me. I can, that's too big for me. I'm trying to make the text big enough so that you guys can see it. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do I need to make the text bigger? I hope you don't have to squint too much to see it. As for presentation mode, I have no clue. I have no clue. I don't know if it has like any sort of full screen or whatever. Obviously, I can make this text bigger, but 160 seems to be about as much as I can handle before it's just too big for me. Okay, next comment. I like your project. You're really brave to use pure Win API to make your game, same way games were made in Windows 3.1 and Windows 95. In my opinion, the hardest part of it is dealing with screen buffers in memory, which is exactly why I'm not using the Windows API to deal with the screen buffer. I mean, I'm making a single GDI call. Other than that, the buffer is all mine, right? I manage the buffer, every pixel in it. It's all controlled by me, and that's the way I like it. He says, I'm using Allegro and your way to parse the tilemap. I'm using Allegro, comma, and your way to parse tilemap inspired me to make my own loader without dependency. I'm following your channel and project. Allegro, wow. So I thought I was doing things the old school way, but I remember using Allegro back in the 90s with like the Borland compiler and DJ GPP and all these kinds of things. I can't believe Allegro is still in use, but it's cool that it is. Okay, the next guy says, I found your channel and it's great. I will try to follow your tutorial, but using OpenGL. Okay, cool. I certainly won't stop you. There are definitely a lot of things that you'll be able to learn, even if you're going to use OpenGL. In fact, OpenGL is probably a good idea to use OpenGL because it is cross-platform insofar as like you could easily port OpenGL stuff to Linux typically. Like there is OpenGL for Linux, so you've got that going for you. However, if you're going to port this to like Xbox, Xbox and Windows are inextricably linked. I mean, obviously the Xbox runs Windows, so and Windows does DirectX, so it may not behoove you to use OpenGL if you're going the more Microsoft-centric route, Windows and Xbox. But if you're looking to make a cross-platform game that you can run on Windows and Linux and Unix or whatever, then OpenGL is a good idea. Okay, and then that about wraps it up for the comments, I believe. So, where are we? I think the last episode where we did the tile map, which I'll go ahead and show you, I think that it was really successful. I'm really happy about where we left off. So, and our movement code is not finished yet. I know that it still has a little bit of work left to be done on it. For example, if I know that the behavior will not be correct when I get all the way to the right-hand side of the world map, and probably on the bottom too. It's working fine for the top and left-hand sides, but the right and bottom-hand sides are still going to need some work. That being said, I don't think we're going to do it today. I think what we're going to do today is we're going to, well, I think we're going to actually switch gears a little bit and introduce music today, background music, since we have the overworld. Basically, I plan on having like a theme for the overworld, a tune for the overworld, and I plan on having a different tune for like when you go into a town or a castle, it'll play a different tune. And the idea is like the overworld music is supposed to be more, inspiring and adventurous, because you're in the overworld, you're going on an adventure. Whereas when you go into a town, it's going to be more sleepy and peaceful music because you're, you don't fight in the towns. You go in there to like buy supplies, sleep at the inn, get gossip and things like this from the townspeople. And then you have other music. For example, when you get in a fight with a monster, the battle music is going to be a different tune. What else? When you're in a dungeon or a cave or somewhere dangerous, there'll be a different tune. So several different pieces of music that we need to add in. since I have my cursor right here where it says talk about to do, it's something that we haven't ever actually talked about. So obviously, I'm sort of just keeping notes here on things that I want to do. Every time I have an idea, I just jot it down in the to-do list. And if I search the project, search the entire solution for to do, I leave them sprinkled throughout the code as well. Some of them I end up finishing and coming back to and implementing, and some of them, like this one, I may actually just whack this one without doing anything because I think our display, like we're already running at a 16 to 10 aspect ratio on a 16 to 9 monitor. So I think that part might be done, so I may not do anything with that one. However, if I keep going, this one, for example, the idea I have is, you remember on the last episode where I basically drew, for debugging purposes, I drew the tile map on top of the actual tiles so that you could see all the 2s and 1s, and then as we add more tiles there will be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7s, all this stuff. Some of the tiles are passable, you can walk on them, some of them are not. Well, this is really handy code, but I don't really want it to be turned on at all times, and I don't necessarily care that it's turned on for the entire screen. I kind of just want the tile map to appear on the tiles that are directly adjacent to the player. I think that would be a good compromise between having, not having too much garbage on the screen. So that's a to-do. What's another one? Another one is, for example, obviously this code that we worked on last time is good code. There's a lot of, we've been honing it and stabilizing it to where it works correctly and doesn't crash. And so I want this code to be reusable. So I'm going to want to, I'm probably going to want to swap maps at some point. And you know what? That's a really good point. I don't know right now if, let me open up CodeFlow for this, or not CodeFlow, ASCII Flow, new and private window. Yeah, sorry, CodeFlow is something that I use at work for code reviews. ASCII Flow. Let's say this is the entire world right here, and this is our little top left-hand corner screen that we've been staring at for so long now. I don't know yet if I want to basically have a map swapping system where I swap, like, say, if I am in this overworld and I walk into a town or a castle, I could do one of two things. I could either swap out this overworld entirely, just like change it and have basically like a G current map variable that represents whatever the user needs to be looking at right now, whether it's the overworld or a castle or a dungeon or whatever. So I basically could have a swapping system like that, and then I could, in my code, I could use this exact same code, and instead of saying, like, for instance here, where I've essentially hard coded G overworld 01 in here. Well, instead of having G overworld 01 there, instead I could have G current map, right? And at some point I could just assign G overworld to G current map, and I could use that to swap different maps if I wanted to have multiple maps in this game. Or I was thinking, what if basically I have my overworld here. I have my overworld and it's like that big. And then over here, I have like, I could make this like town 1. I could make this dungeon 1. I could make this dungeon 2, that kind of stuff. And then my world position basically would still be consistent with, like, my world position would be like 8,000 or something by 64 or something like that, way out here. Um, I'm really just, thinking out loud. I have no idea yet how I'm going to do it. But back to the original point, that's what I'm making these to-do notes for. Um, you know, just jotting stuff down that I want to take care of at some later time. Here's another one. I have no idea how the stats for the player are going to work. You probably are going to have like some XP. You're going to have HP, money, and then you're probably going to have some attributes like strength, maybe agility, intelligence, that kind of stuff. I don't know if I want to make it that complicated to where it turns into like a Dungeons and Dragons type of thing, but um, I may keep it simple and just do HP and magic. I don't know. But anyway, we talked about it. So I'm taking that away. Add more comments. That's sort of like never going to go away because that's always going to be pertinent. There's that one. Create a windowing system. That one's pretty obvious. I mean, we're going to need windows in this game. We're going to need a lot of windows. We're going to need windows for, there's going to be like a little window inside the screen to show our statistics, like how much health we have, how much gold we have, or money, or whatever. All those sort of like vital statistics. We're going to need windows to display dialogue. We're going to need windows to display things like item lists when you go to a shop and you want to buy stuff and you're browsing the inventory. You're going to need a window to display your own inventory, all this kind of stuff. We're going to need lots of windows. So it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that at some point we're going to be making a function that takes in sort of like it probably will take in like a rectangle, just, a rectangle with 4 points, and then whatever 4 points you give it, it will draw you a window with a border, and then you can then write whatever text inside there that you want. Anyway, so this is what I think we're going to do today, though. And the reason why I chose Og Vorbis. Okay, so background music. The thing with background music is that it tends to be at least a couple minutes long. For example, I may have an overworld theme that's 2 minutes long, and it's designed to, run on an infinite loop. The difference between that and like the wave files that we've been using for sound effects, those wave files are very short. So having them be uncompressed, PCM wave files is not a big deal because they're like 0.5 seconds long, so they don't take up too much space. They're not cumbersome. No big deal. But a 2-minute long uncompressed wave file might be like, what is it going to be, like 200 megabytes or something? That's a bit ridiculous. And then, we've got other alternatives too. Like we could do MP3 background music. I think up until recently, there were some licensing issues with using with like the MP3, the technology required to decode an MP3 was, I guess, proprietary, and you had to license it up until a certain point, and then maybe like a couple of years ago, the patent expired, and now the MP3 decoder is now public domain or something. I don't know. Don't take my word for it. I'm not sure, but Og Vorbis is another alternative, and I think most people agree that not only is it better, but it's also not encumbered by any sort of like weird licensing issues. So I think I'm going to use Og Vorbis. So here's the thing: wait? Let me start over. When we wrote load wave from file. Remember this function? It's quite simple, and we went and looked up the file format of a wave file, and we saw that it was quite simple. It basically has it has a bit of metadata at the very beginning of the file. It actually has a wave format data structure right there at the top of the file that gives you all the information you need to know. It gives you all the metadata you need to know about the wave, and then you just basically dump the contents of the wave file into memory, and you have sound, right? You have it was simple, is the point that I'm trying to make. Ogg on the other hand, and the MP3 as well, and whatever other music format you want to come up with, is not simple. It has a lot of it has a ton of like compression built into it, and it's a clever, it's a relatively clever file format. So I happen to already have some music over here. This file right here named overworld01.ogg, and as you can see with my mouse hovering over it, it's 2 minutes long, and it's 1.27 megabytes, which is a very small file size if you consider, like, what is our splash screen? Our splash screen is 136 kilobytes for 1 second. So you could extrapolate that, and you could see that if I were to make a 2-minute long WAV file, it would be much larger than 1.27 megabytes. It's because the Ogg Vorbis file format has a lot of compression built into it. This compression needs to be decoded. And do I want to make an Ogg Vorbis decoder? The answer is no. I do not want to make an Ogg Vorbis decoder. Someone else has already made one, and I think we're going to use his. So if I go and look for STB Vorbis, it takes me to this page right here. Now, this is definitely a change of pace for us, because we are not accustomed to using other people's code in this video series. But I think today we're going to make an exception, because so this guy who wrote this STB Vorbis Ogg Vorbis decoder, his name is Sean Barrett, and in addition to being a very talented programmer, I mean, he's very well known, especially in like the game development circle. He's developed a lot of stuff, and he's just really prolific, a prolific coder, and a really good coder. Anyway, he wrote this a long time ago, and if you look at the keyword right here, public domain, he specifically wrote this to be put into public domain, which means that we can use it unencumbered by any sort of like licensing issues. Speaking of licensing issues, I want to back up just a second before I forget. I want to mention that this Ogg file, I actually commissioned an artist to make this music for me, and I paid for it with money. So we worked out a deal with one another that the author of this music actually retains ownership of the music, and I am licensed to use it in this game. Likewise, when it goes up to GitHub, you'll be able to download it as well, but it is going to be licensed the same way, where you're allowed to use it in playback during this original game with this tutorial, following along. But please don't try to reuse it in another like unrelated commercial project. That would be very, very uncool. So anyway, I'm gonna the person who I got to create this music for me currently goes by the name of Nocturnal Plant, and I don't even know their real name yet at this point, but they're obviously going to be in the credits of my game. Music by Nocturnal Plant will be somewhere in the credits. But anyway, so they're my artist for writing my music, and they've written several pieces for me already. Anyway, back to the Ogg Vorbis decoder. I was going to say Sean Barrett, in addition to being a great coder, is sort of notorious for his blatant disregard of the C compilation model. And what I mean by that is that he has written a lot of things that follow this sort of single header file model where it's just like he creates one file, a .h file, a header file, and it's full of, it has everything in it. It has all the declarations and all of the code. And he says, here, just include this, just pound include this H file, and you get all of it. Which is not the way C is supposed to work. I mean, it's like, I can't argue that what you're doing works, but no one else does it like that. Anyway, I'll show you what I'm talking about. This is Sean Barrett's GitHub page. I don't know why it's not showing up anymore. Oh, hover over that. There it is. This is his repository. And you can see that he's written a lot more stuff other than just STB_Vorbis. But I'm going to grab STB_Vorbis here. And yeah, he wrote this back in 2007. Originally sponsored by Rad Game Tools. See end of file for license information. So end of file, go all the way down here to the end, and notice how this thing is 5,000 lines of code. Okay, so this software is available under 2 licenses. Choose whichever you prefer. Alternative A, MIT license. Alternative B, public domain. This is free and unencumbered software released into the public domain. Anyone is free to copy, modify, publish, use, compile, sell, or distribute this software either in source code form or as a compiled binary for any purpose, commercial or non-commercial, and by any means. Awesome. So this is going to save, I mean, look at all of this. This is how you decode an Ogg Vorbis file. And I don't want to rewrite all this. I mean, as much as I love recreating the wheel, this is one wheel I do not want to recreate. I mean, look at all this. It just goes on and on and on. And on and on and on. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to hit raw to view the raw file. I'm going to can I not select all or save as? There we go. Save as source repos game B stbvorbis.c. There we go. Alrighty, let's go back to his page. Now, see, he has sample code on how to use the API for his C file. See here, look, perfect example. Pound include stb_vorbis.c. I mean, it works, but no one does it like that, man. It's okay. I think he, I don't think he works like that anymore. And I can't really ridicule it. I can't really, like, criticize it because all of his stuff, it works. And he's very popular, very famous. So, you know, who am I to criticize such a figure? Right, so here's what I'm going to do. Oh, let me go back here. There's something he tells you to do. Look, okay, if you want to use it, quote unquote, normally, cut and paste the header file section out into a header file, and then compile stbvorbis as is. All right, so let's try that. Source files in my project. I'm going to add new item. Wait, add existing item. stb underscore vorbis.c. There it is. Open it. And header file begins here. So I'm going to cut all of this out. Okay, cut. Error code. Okay. Header ends here. So select all of that, cut it out, add a new header file, we're going to call it stb vorbis.h. Add. We're going to paste. Okay, save that, and now I'm going to go to main.h, and I think maybe I go to main.c and include it here just to see if we can get it to compile. Include stb vorbis.h. Let's see if it compiles. No, it does not. Oh, is it because I took out all the declarations? That might be it. It's building. It's thinking. Rebuild all succeeded. That's good. And yes, there are 245 warnings here that I will address at some point. And I'm probably just going to disable most of these warnings that originate from this file, because I'm not going to go fixing stb vorbis. It's not my code. I'm choosing to use Sean Barrett's code, so I'll just suppress warnings for his stuff. Anyway, all right, so that compiled. So now we need to know, we need to make a new function now, and I'm going to call it, let's go to main.h, let's go to our function declarations. It's basically going to be very similar to load wave from file, except it's going to be called load og from file, where we have same thing. We take in a file name and we populate a game sound data structure. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my other game sounds, and I'm going to make a new game sound called Overworld 01, which I can't do because I've already got a variable named Overworld 01. Overworld 01 music. Music. Overworld 01. Okay. So now we go to main.c, all the way to the bottom here. And then I'm going to go to WinMain, and I'm going to, somewhere in here where we've loaded all this other stuff, we're going to load the music. Actually, there we go. After I've loaded these WAV files, there we go. If Loadog from file assets overworld01.og, and that is what it's called, right? Overworld01.og. Make this a capital O. Not that it really matters. The NTFS file system is generally not case sensitive, but G music overworld01 is the file that, or the data structure, the game sound that we will be loading into. And if that is not successful, then we cannot play the game. Alright, done. Let's go down to Loadog from file. Okay. This should be really easy. It'll be the exact same stuff that we just did, which is why I'm going back up into the tile map function. We need a file handle, we need a file size, file buffer. So I'm just gonna copy, you know what, I'm gonna copy all the way until that line right there. And we're going to reuse it in our loadog function. We don't need a cursor, we don't need a temp buffer, we don't need rows and columns. Okay, if file handle, create file, generic read, if that fails, then we exit the function. Next we get the file size. If that fails, we exit the function. Let's go back up to the part where we allocate memory. We're going to load this whole OGG file into memory. Just like that. Read file. There we go. Simple. Just because we've already written this before, we don't have to do it again. We're at 39 minutes. Okay, here we are. Loadog. File buffer. We allocate memory. And if we allocate memory, that means, let's see, we need to make sure to free it when we're done with it. If file buffer heap free, get process heap, no flags, and the memory will be file buffer, the memory that we want to free. Okay, we're allocating obviously the file size, that much memory, because we're going to store the entire file in this process as memory. And then we're going to read the entire file into our file buffer. Just like that. Now, now that we have the OGG file loaded in memory, we need to use stbvorbis to decode it into just raw sound. So I'm going to create some more variables here. I'm going to name them int samples decoded, int channels, int sample rate, and again, this is all stuff that I got from his website, from the sample code. So if you would like to understand stbvorbis better, you need to go look at his sample code. Okay, and that's where I got these variables from. And then we need an array, or I should say a pointer to some shorts, decoded audio. And why are they shorts? I'm going to assume that it's because it's 16-bit audio. Okay. Samples decoded equals stbvorbis decode memory. I probably could have used stbvorbis decode file name, and then I would have not had to do all that stuff with the file that I just did, but the file's open now and loaded in memory, so I might as well. Alright, so what is the memory? File buffer, right? File buffer contains the OGG data. The length, I guess it's file size dot quad part, and then the channels, stbvorbis will tell us how many channels the audio is, which is probably 2. I don't know, 1 or 2. I don't know. I actually don't even know if it's mono or stereo. Sample rate, and then where are we going to put the decoded audio? I mean, we'll put it in decoded audio, right? Decoded audio. If that failed, then samples decoded will be 0 or maybe negative. In which case we were going to have to error out, error, bad, compression, buffer. And then we are going to log it. And I should probably specify the name of the file that we were trying to load from. I think that'll just make for a better error message. Oh, okay. We sort of already have the file name here, don't we? All right, let's not worry about it. I like to log stuff so much. Sometimes I log too much. Anyway, All right, first let's just run it and see if it works. This build is taking forever, and I don't know why. Okay, it does work. It didn't crash. I did notice though that the game took actually like almost a second extra to start up, and I think it's because a lot of CPU power is required to decode the OGG file. So that's interesting. If it ends up that our assets end up taking a long time to load, that means that we get to make a loading screen, which would be fun. I would like to make a loading screen, but I worry that if I make a loading screen, it would be unnecessary because all of our assets would load so fast that you would never actually get to look at the loading screen or see the loading screen. So I don't know. Anyway, so okay, I think we have the OGG file properly decoded, but we need to fill out our game sound. Format tag equals wave format PCM. Game sound wave format dot channels equals channels. Game sound wave format samples per second. In samples per second equals sample rate. Average bytes per second equals samples per second times channels times 2. Samples per second times channels times 2. Wave format block align equals game sound wave format channels times 2. Game sound wave format bits per sample equals 16. Game sound wave format I think that's all of that. Let's do these flags. X audio 2 end of stream. Game sound buffer dot audio bytes equals samples decoded times wave format channels times 2. And finally, we have P audio data pointer to the audio data equals decoded audio, right? And what this tells me is that Decoded audio. Decoded audio. Okay, so I'm going to assume that the stb vorbis decode memory function allocates the required memory for us, because I didn't allocate memory for the decompressed audio. Or, yeah, decoded audio. Meanwhile, a file buffer is simply the compressed OGG format. We don't need that anymore, so we can free that at the end of the function. I think it's correct. Oops, clean, rebuild. Okay, hang on. I really need to... I need to... I need to get rid of some of these warnings. Disable 5045. $44.56. $44.57. $62.46. $63.86. $26,451. All right, we're down to 112 warnings. 42. 62.55. 6001. 63.85. 63.85. 4701. 4820. 4820. 100. And of course, I have to make sure that this doesn't disable any of the warnings in my stuff. I just want to disable the warnings in his stuff. Because I'm not trying to fix STB Vorbis right now to compile without warnings. Okay, finally. Looks like all the warnings are gone. And it looks like we have a fully loaded game sound from Loadog from file. Now we need to make another new function called play game sound. Or sorry, play game. Let me look at play game sound. So the thing is I can't reuse this function because this function is specifically for the sound effects where we have 4 source voices that we cycle through so that we can play multiple sound effects simultaneously. But we don't need, we only have one source voice for background music. So I'm just going to write a new function. I'm going to call it play game music. And I better make a declaration for this function in main.h. I'll put it right next to play game sound. All right, we need G music, GX audio. I forget what we named it. GX audio music source voice. Virtual function table. Well, first, okay, well, we have submit source buffer. And we need a this. So, sorry, I'm source. And we need game sound buffer. And then for flags, or whatever this is, we don't need it. But there's more to it than this. We need to start it. We have to, no, music source voice, virtual table start, which I don't know why you can't just start with the GX audio music source voice 0 X audio to commit now. But there's a little bit more to it than that. Like, what if we call play game music and there's already something playing? If there's already music playing, if that happened, that would be a problem, because remember, it would just get queued up behind. Yeah, and we also need to set that it's on an infinite loop, right? So let me make sure and let's see, game sound buffer dot loop count equals X audio 2 loop infinite. Okay. GX audio music. Why would it do that? Music source voice. Stop. X audio. Look, I type music and then hit tab. Okay, there. For some reason, it wanted to go and autocomplete to like X audio mastering voice, and it was getting on my nerves. Anyway, so full stop. That means stop whatever music is playing right now. And if there's no music playing right now, that's okay. And we also need to flush the buffer, the X audio buffer. Flush source buffers. Okay, that is play game music. Now let's go to where do we change the game state? Oh, I know. Let's go to overworld.c and let's go here, since we have a local frame counter here, so we know that we're at the very beginning of the overworld game state. I don't know about this. This doesn't feel right to me, but I'm going to keep going anyway, since I know we're out of time. So we'll say if local frame counter equals 60, then we start the music. Play game music, and we need our G music overworld 01. Speakers, my speakers are on 50%. 25%. Let's see what it sounds like. The build keeps getting slower as we keep adding more stuff to it. I hope you guys do that. That's our overworld theme. Check it. Feel like you're on an adventure yet? Now it's 2 minutes long. I just want to make sure that it loops correctly. That's pretty cool. I hope it's not too loud on the recording. I hope it doesn't drown out my voice. It's a pretty big world map. I remember last time I looked at the map and I thought maybe 10 screens wide by 10 screens tall wasn't going to be big enough. But now that I'm down here in it, I'm starting to think maybe this is big enough. I shouldn't get overly ambitious. This is a pretty big world map. Okay, see this right here? This is exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, where I can't move past here because I didn't put in the logic for what to do when we get to the right side of the edge of the world. So that's something that we'll have to fix, but we're going to fix it next time because we're out of time. I'm just going to wait for the music to loop around and then we're going to quit. Pretty sure that was it. You go around Arrow Lake. Okay, I'm gonna quit. And that is background music. Using the OGG Vorbis file format. So, yes, we are well over time, so we want to call it for today. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, if you want to see me continue development on this game, then please do encourage me by liking and subscribing and telling your friends about this video series. And if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave your questions or comments on the videos, and I will address any interesting comments or questions in an upcoming episode. Lastly, don't forget that we have a companion GitHub repository so that you can go download the GitHub repository, you can clone it, and build this on your own machine and follow along at home. And with that, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.